Well, good morning. My name is Jake Forsyth, and I'm the Next Step Director here at Summit Church in Durango, Colorado. And I hope you all are doing well this morning. Um, we are in week 5 of our sermon series called Bless. And so I hope you've been able to participate in that. We're taking a look at ways we can be a blessing to others in our community, our neighbors, our family, our friends, coworkers. And it's just been an awesome series so far. So I hope you've been able to be a part of that. And in our meditation moments for today, we're going to be reading from the book of Mark. Again, we read from Mark chapter 6 a couple weeks ago when I last led the devotion, and we're reading from Mark chapter 6 again today. So just a few verses in front of what we read last time I was with y'all. So if you want to read along, we're going to read Mark 6, verses 35 through 37 this morning. So if you want to grab your Bible and read along, you can. So we're going to read this real quick, and then we're just going to talk about it a little bit this morning together. So again, I hope you're doing well, and appreciate you joining me if you're here this morning. So Mark 6, 35 through 37. Late in the afternoon, his disciples came to him and said, "This is a remote place, and it's already getting late. Send the crowds away so they can go to the nearby farms and villages and buy something to eat." But Jesus said, "You feed them." "With what?" they asked. We'd have to work 4 months to earn enough money to buy food for all these people." So just a short passage there. But obviously, this is the story that we read in a couple of the Gospels about Jesus feeding the 5,000. And this is, in my opinion, had to be one of the most amazing miracles that Jesus performed, simply due to the amount of people who both witnessed it, but also, more importantly, experienced it. This miracle of the feeding of the 5,000. And we have to keep in mind that only the men were counted in that 5,000 number. It says later in the passage that there were 5,000 men, and then there were also their wives and their children present. So we can safely say that there was probably well over 10,000 and maybe even over 15,000 people present in this story to witness this miracle and to experience this miracle. And can you imagine what the disciples must have thought when Jesus tells them, "You feed them," when they say, "Hey, these people are getting hungry, it's getting late, send them away so they can get something to eat." And Jesus turns to them and says, "You feed them." And I imagine their response was probably the same as what you and I would, or how you and I would have responded, which is to think that's impossible, right? I mean, seriously, feed 15,000 people with what? And we know that the story goes on that a young boy there had a couple fish and some loaves of bread, and but there's no way that that's going to feed that many people. But we read on in the story that when they gathered what they had, which was a little, and clearly not enough, Jesus' power turned what little food they had into more than enough food to feed that large crowd of people, and they even had leftovers after everyone had eaten as much as they wanted. They had leftovers, and so this is just one of those like jaw-dropping miracles that you read about and think, "Wow, this would have been so unbelievable to be a part of something like that." And so this week we're focusing in the Bless series. We're focusing on the E in Bless, which stands for eat. And so if you're reading along in the Blessed book with us, you'll see that the author talks about how something special happens when we gather with others over a meal. And we read throughout the Gospels, we see that Jesus ate with people and shared meals with people, and not just in a miraculous way, but we read in Mark 6 that often it was more in simple and ordinary ways that he enjoyed spending time with people over a meal. And so we see this big miraculous story in Mark 6 and think, wow. But we don't often think of those other encounters that Jesus had with just sharing a meal with someone and experiencing fellowship with them and showing that um, he really cared about them was a big part, a central part of Jesus's mission of loving others and showing them God's love. And so um, we need to remember that in Jesus's culture, sharing a meal with someone was a statement of friendship. It was affirmation that a person's value and dignity and worth. So that was really a crucial part of his ministry. And so I think we take that for granted sometimes, that something as simple as sharing a meal with someone could really bless them, could really open up doors for us to bless them and to get to know them better. And through this blessed series, we're discovering that this should be an important part of our ministry to others as well. And so, my first question to you is: this something that you do regularly to bless others? Do you find ways to gather around a meal with people in order to get to know them, in order to knock those walls down and really build relationships and friendships with them? And if so, or even if not, the other question is: who is Jesus asking you to feed right now? Um, and so keep those in mind as we move through the rest of this blessed series. I know my wife and Carrie and I love to have family, friends, and neighbors over for backyard barbecues and gatherings around a meal often. And there's just something about gathering around a meal that lets people's walls down and allows you to really get to know each other at more of a heart level. And I think Jesus knew that, and I think he knew that was crucial to really allowing people to let him in, and also for them to let him in to that relationship, and really build some trust and get to know each other at a deeper level. So, and that's a really cool thing about this week is it's a fun way to bless others. Who doesn't love to eat a good meal and share some fellowship with a group of people over a meal? And so um, you can even also cover the listen part at the same time as the eat part if you want to. That's always in the book. The author talks about often over a meal is where we do our best listening to others. And so um, so far we've done the first three of the five. So the B is begin with prayer, and so we ask God to reveal to us who He's wanting us to bless. And then the next letter is L, and that's listen. And the third letter is E. So if we begin with prayer, we allow God to reveal to us who He wants us to bless. A really simple next step would be to think about inviting those people over that God's laid on your heart for a meal. And at the same time, you can cover that L part and listen to their stories and really get to know them at a deeper level. And so, and that's 3 out of the 5 blessed principles that we've already covered. And I think they're all things that we can do, simple things that we can do, simple ways we can bless our neighbors, our, whoever God's calling uh, us to bless, whether it's a physical next door neighbor or just others in the community that you know. I think those are all 3 things that we can do to bless people. And so I want to encourage, or maybe even challenge you to practice this blessed principle of eating by hosting a gathering at your house sometime this week with a group of people that God's laid on your heart, and see how blessing them over a meal and listening to them and their stories goes, and how that maybe opens up new doors, new opportunities for you to practice the last 2 blessed principles that we'll learn about next week and the following week. So, again, I hope you have been enjoying this sermon series so far. I know I have, and I wish you well as you continue to seek God's direction in how He's calling you to bless others this week. So, a few questions in the meditation moments that I thought were good ones for us to be thinking about this week, and I'll just share those with you. The first one is, how is God calling you to be a channel through which Jesus' power can work to feed the hearts and lives of others over a meal? So we saw the power of Jesus displayed, power of God displayed um, in the feeding of the 5,000. But how is God calling you specifically to be a channel in which Jesus' power can be revealed over a meal with someone? The second question is, when do you see people hurting or in need, or when you see people that are hurting or in need, are you more inclined to respond like the disciples with maybe doubt or of the feeling of that's impossible, or are you more likely to respond like Jesus, which is, hey, let's ask God's blessing and providence over this, um, and let's allow God to intervene here and do His work. So uh, I know if I'm honest, I'm probably more like the disciples in those situations. So that's a place I need to work on and really rely on God to show up in those places in miraculous ways. And then the third and last question is, what concerns or fears do you have about what might happen if you're more often responded to suffering with active compassion? What concerns or fears do you have about what might happen if you were more often responding to suffering with active compassion, like Jesus? So, just some good questions in the meditation moments this week to reflect on. Our memory verse for this week is Matthew 6:11, and it is, "Give us today the food we need." Remember, our prayer focus for October is the world church and for pastors. And so I want to encourage us all to continue praying for Pastor Jeff and all the other pastors here in Durango and all the pastors around the country and the world who faithfully serve their churches and communities every day. And I know there's a lot of pastors who are really tired and really worn out from all the changes through COVID and whatnot. And so let's just continue to lift our pastors up and the world church up this month of October. And if you don't know already, we do have a basket in the atrium area here at the church for cards for Pastor Jeff. So if you want to drop off a card for Jeff with some words of encouragement, I encourage you to do so over the next week or two for the rest of this month. So it'll be out there. So anyhow, I hope you all are doing well. And it's good to see you again. And I will see you in a couple of weeks. Should be Rob next week with you all. And I'll see you in a couple of weeks. Have a good one.